The generation below us is growing up in a very different world to the one we grew up in, where the spotlight is on them all the time. So I think we have to do things differently as men, as dads, because otherwise we're not going to connect with them. There's a lot of pressure that are on dads. We've got, family plate spinning, we've got work plate spinning. But the one thing for me this year that's different is that actually opening up, talking to my wife, it's been a massive help. I think with kids, we expect big moments. Those are scripted moments. The real big moments are the little moments. If you were having constant migraines and you'd tried everything, at some point you might go, maybe I'll get my eyes checked. And actually, that's maybe what you need to do with kind of fatherhood.
A massive thank you to our sponsor NTS, Nuclear Transport Solutions, who are the leading global provider of safe, secure and reliable nuclear transport solutions. We are very grateful for NTS sponsoring this episode of Tackling It Together. Welcome to Little Blackbird's Tackling It Together podcast, and today as a guest we have Ryan Gray. Yeah.
You made me sound like James Bond then.
007. Ryan, how's it going?
It's all right, I think. It's been worse. But
looking sharp with the new haircut.
Someone told me I was being filmed, so I thought, best go and see my Turkish friend and get it sorted.
I feel privileged.
You look freshly polished.
Yeah, freshly polished, yeah. Put a bit of brasso on. So, Ryan, you and I know each other. I did a talk at the Story House a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
You and Sai and a couple other lads from your podcast, you have a podcast called Just Real Dads.
We do, yeah.
And we met then and we've had a number of conversations. The talk was around masculinity and I was lucky enough to come on your podcast and we spoke a lot about emotional intelligence.
I like that you said you were lucky enough. I was going to say we were privileged to have you, but if you were lucky enough, then we'll take that, yeah, thanks.
Hey, we had a good conversation.
We did. It was a great episode, actually. And it's still on Spotify if anyone wants to have a listen.
There we go.
After plug. This one, obviously.
First plug. only just started. But what, obviously I said I wanted to get you on the podcast because one, I'm really interested about your journey and what you've kind of created with the podcast. And it's brilliant. I love listening to it, to the episodes. But also I want to talk a little bit about fatherhood, which sits as a bit of a theme around the podcast. And what are your learnings and what are the kind of little nuggets you've taken from guests as you've had them on?
Yeah, cool.
Over all the episodes. So why did you say yes when I offered you to come on? Why did you say yes?
I think part of it was quite tactical on your part because you didn't ask me directly, you left a voicemail. So I couldn't say no to you directly. And then I had a listen and thought, actually, when it comes to the podcast, I love what we do on the podcast. It's really good. It's almost like I've said before, it's almost like free therapy. Like we just talk through stuff that's going on for us as dads, stuff that's going on in our lives. And it was just a really good opportunity to come and chat to someone who, in such a short space of time I've got to know quite well, and I think you may have even earned my respect. Yeah, we're at that level. Yeah. I know. So yeah, I wanted to come and return the favour, I suppose.
Amazing.
And I'm the good-looking one from our podcast, so you don't want any of the other three on the camera. No way.
Yeah.
No way.
Tell us a bit about the podcast. Tell us a bit about its history, when you started, why you started, and where you are now.
Like most good things, Just Real Dads started on a night out where we were just... I can almost picture the exact spot we were in a bar in Chester. And there were three of us there. Glenn wasn't there, but Sai and Stu and I were sat just chatting and putting the world to rights and talking about our kids, talking about family life, talking about the things we struggle with. And we'd got to that point of the evening where we were actually past all the small talk and it was starting to get a bit more serious and starting to actually kind of be a bit more meaningful. And Stu, just before he went to the bar, I think, jokingly said, we should make a podcast out of this. And Sai and I went, that sounds like a great idea. So we talked about it while he was at the bar. And then he came back and we said, Stu, we're going to make a podcast. And now, I think we're 30 episodes in.
Wow.
And Stu's still not convinced that it's going to be a thing. He still needs reminding that actually, and it certainly, when it comes to getting them there on time, he needs reminding that it's a thing. Yeah. The name kind of came from that conversation. We talked about, what would we do what would we talk about? And we said we'd just try and be real, and just try to be honest. And we've had some really great episodes. We've had some bad ones, but I think every podcast does. And we've talked about stuff that actually, you know, it's stuff that we've all been through and are going through, and it's really grown, and we've loved doing it. And because it's grown, I think our friendship as a four has grown as well. So yeah, it's been a good thing.
So when you talk about, you know, we're going to get into talking about fatherhood, but for you as a dad, how important has friendship been for you on that path of being a dad, being a father?
I think it's hugely important, not just for support, and I'll come back to that in a minute. I think one of the big ones is about kind of having people around you that you can look to kind of as role models. And, you know, for me, in terms of being a role model as a dad, my dad's brilliant. I love him. But he lives in a different country. You know, the other person that I'm close to as a dad is my brother, but he lives in Northern Ireland as well. So it's nice to have kind of those people around you that are around me that have been just sort of people I can touch base with, and people that I can look to and go, oh, that's how you did that. And then find that the flip side is true, that actually people, because there's been a number of times when to be fair, it's usually the one who's got the youngest kids. It's usually Si who's messaging and saying. I can always tell when Si messages as well, because I get 2 messages in the same minute. But he'll message and it'll be like, we're doing this, or this has happened at school, what should we do? Or so actually having each other to just shout on and ask for some help, whether it's actual like shouting or whether it's just through a message or whatever, has been really, like, it's been really good. And then you get to that point where you think, actually, I'm not just using other people as a role model, they're using me. So I have to think then about how I am as a dad, and whether I'd want to be whether I would be a good role model for myself. You know, so it's been a real challenge too, but in the right ways, I think.
So I'm going to ask you a big question here.
Okay. I'm already married.
Right, let's knock it on the head. Why'd you get a nice haircut from me then? 30 episodes. Since you started the pod,
yeah,
what kind of changes do you feel you've made that's made you a better dad?
The word better is an interesting one. Like, have I become a better dad, or have I changed the way I do things to be, well, I suppose, more effective? And I guess, you know, there's the argument that, well, if I'm more effective, then I'm better. I think one of the key things is opening up. It's admitting, like, one of the key things for me is actually saying, I'm getting this wrong, or I'm not sure what to do. And actually going and saying to someone, look, I need some help with this. How would you approach this? My kids are, I've got a teenage daughter, and then Joan is 10, and Joan is ADHD, and Sammy's had a recent autism diagnosis. And Glenn's gone through that with his kids. So Glenn and his wife have been a real kind of support for both me and Andrea. So it's that ability to actually hold my hands up and go, you know, instead of being a man and saying, oh, well, you know, I can get through this. I'll just kind of, you know, persevere. It's saying, I can't get through this. I need some help. And I think that's been one of the big changes really for me. And listening to other dads and, you know, on the pod, listening to people who are going through things has been really effective for that, because you sort of realise that. And it was one of the things I thought about coming here. I was like, well, you know, I'm not anything particularly different. I'm just a normal bloke. But actually, when you hear other people's normal, it gives you a little bit of perspective on your own, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know what you mean. So when you say that you're just a normal bloke, if you think back to your role models or masculinity of decades ago, what are the changes that you've seen, either, you know, since you've done the pod or with others, what's the changes that we've started to see from? And the reason I ask this, I fundamentally believe that old stereotypes or traditional stereotypes of masculinity are not fit for purpose.
No, not anymore. I don't think that's because necessarily they were the wrong thing. I think that the way we do things as dads has to change because, and not even just as dads, as men, because the generation below us is growing up in a very different world to the one we grew up in. Like, they're growing up in a world where the spotlight is on them all the time. Like, as well as doing, everything else we talked about, I teach, and it's horrible seeing the impact of a misuse of social media and things on kids. But they're growing up as digital natives, and that's their world. So I think we have to do things differently as men, as dads, because otherwise we're not going to connect with them. And I think part of that is showing them that it's entirely okay to step away from social media and actually to connect with real people and to build relationships that are open and honest and vulnerable, because that's the only way that they're going to find security. But I see far too many kids who find their security, who find their effectively their meaning, I suppose, in likes and in their social media posts, or in someone else spouting rubbish to them on the other end of TikTok or Instagram or whatever. So they need real, actual men, whether that's as their dads, as their teachers, as uncles, friends of the family, whatever, that they can look at and go, okay, so it's all right to feel stuff, because the world's telling them not to.
Which is emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
Which we've spoke about previously, I think when I came on the podcast.
You did, yeah.
We predominantly talked about that. So how do we develop that? As men that have maybe not necessarily experienced that, what's the key things that you've discussed on your pod, or in your opinion, what are the key things we can do to develop that?
Again, to probably repeat myself, it's about opening your mouth and talking and realising that, I think there's something in realising that it's okay to feel stuff. I've had a conversation this week in school actually with a load of lads, and I've just said, for me, the journey I've been on, especially kind of with this idea of emotional intelligence, I've got to a point where at 46, I've kind of changed the way I do dad, the way I do husband, the way I do even brother and son, the way I do life. And because I've made those changes and opened up a little bit more, I'm better at being a dad. I'm better at being a husband. And I think my friendships and my like I said, my relationship with my brother have developed as well, to the point where, we're not just taking the mick out of each other all the time. We'll pick up the phone and we'll actually say, and it's such a simple sentence to say, how's your mental health? And that's just a huge step, to be able to actually ask someone out loud, how is your mental health? Because that then means that they know, like my brother does that to me all the time, and he knows that I can't hide behind the question, I can't run away from the question, he's got me. So what's the harm in me being honest? And as soon as you take that step and say, well, actually, it hasn't been brilliant, it's been a rough week, but I really appreciate you asking. It's just knocking down walls. But it's not, like I say, it's not doing a disservice to how our dads were or how our granddads were before us. It's just a different world,
What about, I've had a couple of chats recently with pals, and one thing that pops up is, I don't know whether it's this kind of time of year going into autumn, but pressure.
Yeah.
It's inevitable that in life we start to experience. But what have you kind of discussed on the pod, or what is it that we experience specifically as dads in terms of pressure, and how do you manage that? What's your little tips to deal with that pressure?
There's two parts there. The second one's more difficult to answer. What are my tips? There's a lot of pressure that are on dads, at the minute, because you're looking at, like I say, we're looking at like the pressure that we're under, I think we've got to, it's all about, you know, it's the classic cliche of spinning plates, that we've got, you know, family plate spinning, we've got work plate spinning, we've got relationships spinning with, you know, outside of the home. We've got looking after our physical health, looking after our mental health, keeping things on the level on finance. You know, there's tons of pressure that's on, I think, pretty much, you know, every man, every dad. But the one thing for me this year that's different is that I've realised that I don't have to shoulder that burden. That actually opening up, talking to my wife, sitting down, carving out time to sit down and say, right, how's your day been? How's your week been? What are the challenges? You know, what's going on for you at the minute? Has just been, it's been a massive help. But then away from that, having someone who's away from your stress situations to go to and say, have them ask you, how's it doing? You know, what's going on? You know, what do we need help with? Where can you set stuff down? Because sometimes it's not, you can't see it when you're in the situation. You have to be, you need someone outside the situation to say, you need to set that down. Yeah. It's not good for you, you know.
I'm right in saying, is your wife a psychotherapist?
She is, yeah. Oof. Yeah, that's fun. She's brilliant at not doing her work at home, because she could with me a lot, but she doesn't. She's great, and it's really lovely to see, like, because I'm changing the way I do things at home, then our connection's stronger. Yeah. So actually then when she wants to talk, I'm more available to listen, and vice versa. So I'm hearing more of the stuff she's doing, and it's really I just love listening to her when she talks passionately about what she does and how she helps people, and it's just great. But yeah, it's a big pressure job for her too. You know, we both have an incredible pressure, but because we've got each other and because we've got the right people around us outside of our marriage, then I think we're in a decent spot at the minute, he says.
Especially with that haircut.
I know, look, that's good.
You know, already, and I've gone into that natural trap of thinking about what are the pressures, and I've already, 2 or 3 questions I've asked you. You might be looking at the negative side, but what about the good side of being a dad? What about the gratitude, being grateful for the good stuff we've got? Talk to me about It
is hard. Like, don't get me wrong. This morning I was yelled at a lot because we changed Jonah's routine a little bit, which, you know, even the slightest change can cause the biggest meltdown. But before he left the house this morning, so it was getting us all out of the house, getting to the car, we've got to get going, get to school. And instead of walking straight out of the house, he turned around and came into the kitchen and he threw his arms around me and said, I love you, Dad. Yeah. And after the shouting, I was literally public enemy number 1 this morning because I'd asked him to brush his teeth.
How dare you?
I know. I mean, but that moment of, I love you, Dad, like, I could have stood there all day. I know I'd have wanted to, but we had to get going. We had to get to school. But it was just those lovely little moments. And then, you know, we had some time last weekend. My mum came to visit. We had some time as a family. Jonah and I started some new Lego, because I flipping love Lego. If I could have anyone sponsor our podcast, it'd be Lego, without a doubt.
It's an expensive hobby.
It is expensive. If you buy wrong, I buy my own vintage. But we're building this Lego thing, and just the 2 of us sat together, and it was. You can always tell it's a precious moment because you can see corner of your eye. Your wife's whipped out her phone and taken a photograph. You know that that's a key moment, and it was lovely. And it's just those little moments, and it's those with him, or it's, you know, grabbing a coffee with Sammy. Or the great thing is I teach at the school Sammy goes to. So every now and again I'll see her. And she didn't do it too much in like year 7. It took her a little while before she accepted that I was there and I was Dad. I still remember being out on bus duty and she was only in year 7 and she walked past and went, "Hi, Dad." And I was like, "Oh, I'll take that. Okay, it's a step." But now we're open, and, you know, I'll get a hug every time I would see her in the corridor, or I'll get bring a big smile or whatever. Like, I think with kids, we expect big moments because, you know, we see it on Hollywood, we see it on TV, but the big moments those are scripted moments.
Yeah.
The real big moments are the little moments, the little catches that are just, you know, that's enough to charge my batteries. Just a little hug that says, I love you, Dad. That'll do. Forget screaming at me. I'll take it.
You nailed it there when you said charging your batteries. I think that's key.
Yeah.
As a dad, you know, like I refer to it as putting that oxygen mask on. When is it that you need? Because we can't drink from an empty cup.
No, not at all.
We try many a times to do that. So,
I love that you've just done charging your batteries with your oxygen mask on and drinking from an empty cup.
Yeah,
that
in
was
one sentence.
Wonderful metaphors. Good job.
So, one of the things that you boys have chatted about on the pod, how do you recharge that battery? What are the things that you do? You said like the pod's like free therapy, but
It is, yeah.
what works for you?
I think, like we've talked, it wasn't too long ago we talked on the pod about that, and we talked about kind of finding your thing. You know, Glenn's is an expensive hobby because he has a very expensive mountain bike. Don't bring that up with Glenn if his wife is there, but he'll throw himself down the side of a mountain on his bike, and he loves it. You know, and he more often than not narrowly avoids breaking himself, but that's his thing. You know, Cy never sits still, and he's now fully middle-aged, so his thing is a spot of gardening, loves a garden centre.
What age is middle age?
Well, the way Cy's behaving, I think it's about 55, 60 for him. But he's also, and I don't look it, but he and I both enjoy going to the gym, and you know, doing that, finding something physical is key, I think, to looking after the mental and looking after the emotional. You know, if you can just get out and do something, even if it's walking the dog, you know, that makes a big difference. And I'm learning very much that sometimes walking away from a situation is actually what's best.
Yeah.
And you know, Instagram's brilliant, because the other day my wife sent me a post and I was like, actually that makes a lot of sense. And it was about kind of stepping away or being calm. That kids don't need your Incredible Hulk. They need you to just come in and be calm. And if you can't be calm, then don't involve yourself in the situation.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's about finding your thing. You know, whatever it is. You know, just looking after yourself and being sensible with it. Like, you know.
But it's that when your thing, what does your thing do for you? It gives you what? It gives you validation. It gives you headspace. Yeah. It gives you that sense of purpose.
It does. And I think that headspace is so important. Like, it's crucial to have time to process and to give you time to process. Because to go back to all that pressure, you know, it's like it keeps coming and it keeps coming. And every little bit of pressure is like a fresh Mento in the bottle of Coke. You know, and at some point, if you don't release that pressure and get rid of it, it is going to blow up and it's going to hurt someone. It might hurt you and the people around you. But if you don't deal with the pressure by getting the headspace, then there's going to be a problem at some point. And, you know, that's a big part of the journey I'm on, is making sure that I give myself the headspace and, you know, find people or find time just to be away from the situation. Yeah.
What's it like being a teacher?
It is. I love it. It is the most. It's the most amazing thing when you watch kids get it. Like, when, regardless of what it is you're talking about, I have the pleasure of teaching English and drama. When you see a kid who has struggled with something for ages, all of a sudden you see the light bulb and you go, yes. There it is. That's why I do what I do. And I'm really, really blessed, because actually I enjoy my job, but I also enjoy where I work. And I think that's a big, you know, that's a big win for me. I enjoy the people I work with. We get on brilliantly. But it's the moments that you look for. It's hard work. Like, don't get me wrong, it's constant. And, you know, people think, well, you're only in school from 8:30 till 3:30, but that gives you loads of time. And then, of course, there's the holidays. Yeah. But I don't think I'll ever forget, it was 2 or 3 years ago, I had a form, and someone said, oh, sir, you've got 2 weeks off. What are you going to do? You're just going to chill for 2 weeks? And someone in the back of the room, another kid, went, he hasn't got 2 weeks off. He'll take 3 or 4 days recovering from this half term. If he's lucky, he'll go a couple of days to himself, and then he's got to start getting ready for next after him.
Yeah.
I was like, there speaks the voice of a kid with parents who are teachers. So it's a brilliant job. It's hard work, but I wouldn't do anything else.
How long have you been a teacher?
Nearly 16 years.
And what are the changes that you've seen throughout that 16 years in terms of workload and pressure? And
the workload's gone up. I think the pressure's gone up. But like I say, I'm in a situation where the school I'm at is managed well. I'm managed by someone who actually believes in the people who she manages, and then the SLT, the whole team, value you as people rather than just staff. So I'm really lucky in that. I think that the changes or the differences are more in kind of the social structure of schools. Like it used to be, even when I was at school, which was a few years ago, the year 7s were scared of the year 11s. But now, there's no fear. They're coming in and they all know each other online anyway. So there's no, they're the big kids, we're the little kids. We're all in it together, which doesn't create an even playing field anymore.
No.
It used to be quite nice, but not anymore.
It's interesting when we think about communication, like as a teacher or as a dad. That we do a lot of work around masculinity and well-being and mental health, and I've done a number of sessions with teachers, and we talk about the automatic thing. If we see something in school, if we see something our child that we think's out of order, we can naturally go to tell, do this, do that. If you do that, A, B and C will happen. But for your experience as a teacher and as a dad, what's the impact if we can shift to ask and be really curious and get under the surface? It's
a huge impact. And I try really hard to, and it is hard to get your head around that shift. But once you do, whether it's as a teacher or as a dad, where instead of saying, stop doing that, it's, where's that coming from? What's going on for you? I can see this stuff happening. Let's get to the bottom of that together. That makes a massive impact, because then that kid knows, and even in school, that kid knows that if they're struggling, you're going to see them differently. So they might come to you. They might come and say, sir, this is doing my head in, and I'm going to pop. So then it's a sit down, and it's a, right, where's it coming from? What's pressing the buttons? And as soon as you start helping a kid to realise what it is that's pressing the buttons, it makes your job easier, because you're not having to go, stop doing that. You're able to say, right, I can see it's coming. Let's get you out of the way. And it's becoming more and more the case that, the big, not the buzzword, but one of the big pushes at the minute is trauma-enforced practice. So it's less punitive, it's less fix the problem, but instead find the root and deal with that and see where it's coming from first. See the kid, not the issue,
And that's quite hard as a dad, isn't it? Because quite often when you might not know what your challenges are as a father. I know for me, being brought up in West Cumbria, I've got a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old, and noise and chaos. I'm here with, fidget toys and whatnot.
We need to get you some better ones.
Yeah, no, I know you're not a big fan of them. It's quite hard, isn't it? Because you might not know what those challenges are until you're presented with that problem.
Yeah.
And I hear that a lot with men, whether it's fatherhood, it's pressure, it's leadership. What advice would you give people as a dad if they were encountering those problems or those challenges? How do we better ourselves, and how do we learn as an adult in this modern world and contemplate changing and tackling behaviour? Another big question.
It is. You're good at this. You should do a podcast or something.
Cheers. I've thought about it.
I think it's like if you had a physical health thing where it kept coming up, if you were having constant migraines for whatever, and you tried everything and it wasn't working, well, at some point you might go, maybe I'll get my eyes checked and maybe that'll help. And actually, that's maybe what you need to do with kind of fatherhood It's sitting down and going, the way I'm doing things isn't working, because I keep trying to do this and I keep getting knocked back from the kids. I keep getting anger. I keep getting sulking. I keep getting moods. I keep getting whatever. That's not working. So it's a case of going, right, what if I try something else? You know, what if I look at, and instead of looking at what the kid's doing, have a look at what you're doing and see what it is about you. Because you can't, as much as you love your children, you can't reach inside their brains and switch something that you want to fix. You've got to model that yourself. And actually that's something at the minute that I'm working really hard on, because it's not easy. Like, you know, we talked about, you know, the generational stuff. We get programmed and we get programmed and we get programmed, and we get it so ingrained that it's not going away quickly. But it is fixable. You know, it is, the upgrades are there, if you like. And it's about making sure that rather than looking at the kid and trying to fix them, look inside and go, right, if I'm getting that reaction every time, it might not be them, it might be me. What can I do? And it comes down to that vulnerability. It comes down to holding your hands up and saying, I'm not getting it right all the time. And it's about finding people around you that you can ask questions of. It's about using decent resources online. There's tons of them. It's about, you know, reading. It's about whatever. Find stuff that helps you to ask yourself the questions rather than them. You know, it's not a plug, find a decent podcast that actually helps with stuff.
Do you know of any?
No. I said one that helps. If you want to listen to, you know, four half-wits complaining about the world, then by all means listen to Just Real Dads. But find something and, you know, walk the dog, put your headphones on and get out. Like, do the physical whilst you're doing the mental. It's much easier. Yeah. You know?
You've just, so as a lad brought up in Northern Ireland,
yeah,
I think I said to you on your pod that on a clear day in Workington, West Cumbria, if I looked straight over, I could see Belfast. Vulnerability and resilience.
Yeah.
Pretty key as a parent.
Yeah.
As a man, as a father. How did you view vulnerability and resilience? Well, let's go with vulnerability as a young lad being brought up in Northern Ireland versus now the dad at 40 what? 46?
Yeah, I wondered where that number was going to go there, but you went 46. That's okay.
I was going to go 42 plus.
That wouldn't be far off either, I suppose. Yeah, growing up in Northern Ireland, I don't know whether, because, you know, there's obviously the classic Northern Ireland gets a bit of stick. Northern Ireland gets a bad rep, I think sometimes, but like for me growing up, actually, there weren't, you know, whilst the troubles were happening, there weren't many occasions that I was aware of that actually impacted me directly. That's not saying it didn't, because I was still living in a country where the news was never good. You know, my dad would come home every night and he'd switch the news on at 6 o'clock and we'd hear about, you know, something had happened in this place and something had happened there, and it was pretty grim. And I mean, I still remember we were, and again, it's one of those kind of life moments where you remember the exact spot. We were in the McDonald's in Bucharest on the day of the Umma bombings. We'd been out, my wife and I were part of a team that had gone to an orphanage. We'd done a load of kind of hard graft, tiling and maintenance work. And on our way back, we stopped in Bucharest for a bit of a jolly for a couple of days, or maybe even just a day on the way through. And it was a proper down-to-earth moment. Like, it was a proper bump, because we'd had the high of being away and seeing the good and actually, you know, developing relationship and connecting. You know, obviously that was a connection that's lasted, because here we are now 25 years later, and more than that even. And, you know, that girl that I was with then is now my wife and the mother of my kids. So those relationships were obviously being formed then, but then home comes in with a bump down to earth with with that horrible news. So I think that probably built resilience more than vulnerability, because you kind of, it sounds a bit blasé, but you kind of just got used to it. Like it was happening all the time. And there have been moments when things have happened that I look back on and go, oh yeah, okay, maybe that was a little bit more serious than I thought. But the resilience is there to keep going. The vulnerability really, I don't know whether, probably more, not geographical, but more generational, that, you just weren't. You didn't open up. You didn't talk to anyone because, that was the girly thing to do, So that's been a real challenge for me, to shift my mindset and to think, right, well, hang on, I am emotional. I've got emotions. And actually, Sammy will tell you that I cry all the time. Like, I'll sit and watch, it's reality TV. And it's ridiculous because we used to take the mick out of my dad because he couldn't watch. I remember watching my dad when people came out of the Big Brother house and met their families again. And he'd sit, and just as they came out and they got to that hugging moment, my dad would have to go and make a cup of tea. He couldn't even be in the room.
It wouldn't be the reality TV that I would go to that would bring on emotion.
I know, but there we are. But I guess in a way, like, having kids and seeing their journey with emotions, it's allowed me to actually go, do you know what? Well, why not? What have I got to lose? Because they're learning from me all the time. I can learn from them. But if I'm not the best role model that I can be for them, they're going to find it somewhere else. So I'm going to be emotional and I'm going to be honest. And, when we sit and watch stuff, they'll not even look, and Sammy will just go, "You're crying on your dad." I'll be like, "Yeah, I am." Because what's the point in lying to her, That's only going to drive up, put up a wall where she starts thinking, well, my dad's a heartless sod. He's got nothing going on inside his chest at all. And then that tells Jonah, men don't show emotion. Rubbish. It's rubbish. There's no point. So I just own my emotions. And I'm getting better at it. Not something I've always been brilliant at, but something I'm getting better at because I'm 46. And like I said, I'm fairly normal, I think. But I'm doing everything I wanted to do. Yeah. I've always wanted to teach. I'm married to the most amazing woman. We own our own home. Car's all right. 2 kids who are happy most of the time. I've got nothing to gain by not being myself anymore, I think as soon as I got past that hurdle, bring it on. That lifted a lot of pressure that I probably put on myself.
As you were speaking there, I was just thinking about vulnerability and resilience, and I don't know whether I shared this with you when I did the talk. I think I maybe did, but vulnerability for me as a father is almost enjoying the vulnerable moments, as opposed to as a kid, when you feel vulnerable, have a pint or avoid it or go and kind of play a sport. But for me, I don't know where you sit with this, but as a dad, I look for those moments. We don't have a rugby club now, and I played my last game of rugby last June. And I remember playing, and my kids were playing.
Seniors game, was it?
Yeah, veterans.
Oh, okay.
It was veterans. And my little boy, and I think I shared
you did,
previously.
I love this story, bro.
But this story of when opposition had scored a try against us, and I was leaning against the posts, and I was breathing on my backside, and I looked up to the mound of the hill that we've got behind the posts, and my kids and other kids were rolling down the hill, and I looked at my little girl and little boy, and my little boy just looked at me and said, "You got this, Dad." Now, me years ago would have got the water bottle, put that straight over my head to mask all the tears, and just ran straight off to the restart. Whereas for me, vulnerability is trying to lean into those moments, and I sat there. I told the boys, "Crack on, I'll catch up when I'm good and ready." I got every tear, and I enjoyed every tear that rolled down my face. And I thought I'd earned that, he'd earned that, but I think it's those moments where you can lean into that. And whether you had that when the kids, and you just that wave of emotion where we naturally think, right, this isn't right, let's avoid it. But when you can sit in that,
massively
there's
important.
something beautiful about it.
Yeah. And I think as well, like that sort of sitting in it and seeing it and just letting it happen is huge. Like it, and knowing as well that, you know, it's like a wave. It'll come and it'll peak and it'll pass again. And it doesn't make you any different a person. Probably makes you a better person. But I think for me, the big challenge was, and it's like you say, it's about those positive moments of vulnerability. Emotions certainly will come in tears, but sometimes the emotions will come in losing your head and actually raging through a moment. And the positive comes in coming back to it and sitting with whoever it was, whether it was the kids, whether it was your wife, whether it was a friend, and saying, look, I shouldn't have done that. I'm really sorry. I let my emotions win. I'm sorry I did that. And that repair becomes actually the really important positive moment. Because that then means that you're vulnerable as a dad, as a husband, whatever, by saying, I got it wrong. And giving that person the respect of putting it right again. Massively important, I think.
And that's accountability, isn't it?
Yeah.
One, putting your hand up and saying, I got that wrong. And two, doing everything in your power to prevent that happening again.
Yeah.
Which is a key, you know, I spoke about that recently in the school, the power of accountability, just putting that up. But the most important thing is trying your best to prevent that happening again. It might do, but preventing it, because that's when trust is built or trust is lost.
But again, like, I don't live in such a big house that, you know, if I lose it and my wife and I argue, the kids are going to hear it. It's as important that they hear that as they hear us put it right, because if they don't, like for me, and it's something I think I've become more aware of as Jonah's got older, and I don't know whether it's just because there's two of them or whether it's because he's a lad and you want him to grow up into kind of the man that you want him to be, which puts a load of pressure on just in the sentence. But actually hearing me say to my wife, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that. There's a better way that we should have dealt with that. I'll try harder next time, or I'll try different next time. He's got to hear that, because that's the role model that I need to be for him. Yeah.
And it's easily done, isn't it? I mean, I'm not, you know, Will today, I'm not, I've had countless occasions where pressure, my tank's quite low at the moment. I've been very busy work and in life, and you have those moments. And it goes back to that bit when I asked about vulnerability. But for me, resilience is when your kid's my little girl, you know, at times when she'll just say something that's really cutting. And it's like, oh, I don't love you, or I hate you. And it's like, oh, it's like a physical kick in the cherries. And those moments can happen. But for me, it's about resilience is those moments that when you get those cut moments to think I've failed, or I haven't done that right, or I've let them down. And it's about being compassionate with yourself in that moment to say you're not going to get it right all the time.
Definitely.
We have rubbers on the end of our pencils because we make mistakes.
Yeah.
We're going to make shed loads. But
exactly.
that, along with that accountability,
and
model them.
The part of the journey that I'm on at the minute is kind of learning the difference between my emotional brain and my logical brain, and learning when to switch one off and let the other one kick in. And in those moments, like you say, when she says, I don't love you or whatever, or the one I get is the sarcastic, great job being a dad, from a 10-year-old boy. I'm like, how do you know? But you have to learn not to say that to him. But it's then when I go, my emotional brain could go, you need to respond in anger here because he's pushing boundaries. My logical brain goes, nah, but wait a minute. It's coming from somewhere. He doesn't mean it. And it's listening to the right part, I think, and making sure you know when the right thing is. Because I think that's massive, to say, right, wait a minute. You don't like me in this moment because I've said you can't have a bag of crisps. It's a bag of crisps. What's the point of my rage at that point? What's the point of me going, oh, it's not going to do any favours to anyone. It's going to prolong the pain.
I love you to bits, but I don't like your behaviour at the moment.
Yeah, I know. It's so easy to say that when they're not in the room with you. You are a wonderful person, but the way you're behaving is not respectful. Nope. I haven't got that in me. Step away.
Right, it's been a cracking conversation.
Thank you.
We always ask our guests for your bit of advice. So what is your little Blackbird worm of wisdom?
One thing is, when you talk to your kids, I I went through a long time of, how was your day? And you get one-word answers. It's fine. It was all right. And I've started to change, because I think that's really key, to show an interest in kind of how their day's been, and to get them to think about kind of what was good or bad, or why their day wasn't whatever it should have been. So now when I get in the car, and it happened this evening, Andrea came and picked me up with the kids, and I said, right, who wants to kick us off? Who wants to tell us about their day first? And she just went, Andrea was behind me, she went, well, my day was all right, it was pretty busy. And Sammy said, no, Mum, stop. That's not how he asks. I was like, okay, so it's already going in. And Sammy said, he'll ask you in a minute, if your day was a film, who would play the parts in it? Or like, what kind of film would it be? So then I had to think, right, so Andrea answered that question, and I had to think, I can't ask Sammy that question, because she's already expecting it. So I just went, what colour was your day today? I just went, what? What colour was your day? And today apparently was a deep purple day. So then I went, oh, that means it was kind of like moody and was it a bit depressing or whatever? She went, no, it was just sort of, it was more warm than it was depressing. So that then sparked the conversation. So don't ask your kids how their day was. Throw them a curveball and ask them something ridiculous like, if your day was a biscuit, what would it be? And that sparks the conversation. Because as soon as you open up conversation with kids, then you're winning. You're beating a screen. The other actual, serious word of wisdom is, when you talk to kids, look them in the eye. Remember that they're little people. Get down to their level. And it's easier to do with Sammy because she's taller than Andrea. But with Jonah, it's getting down to his level. And just so he can see me if he chooses to. Don't force it, but just let him look at you whenever he's ready and say, how you doing? Or, I'm sorry I did that. Or, do you know where the TV remote is? Or whatever it is. Because as soon as you're above and bigger and louder, it shuts them down. And that takes away any, that makes vulnerability a waste of your time, because it's not what it's being vulnerable. Show them that you're willing to get down to their level and have a conversation on their level. Massively important, I think.
Right, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Cheers, pal.
Thanks for having us.
We didn't have much of a plan, but we've had a cracking conversation.
Yeah, that's worked out, I think.
Thanks for listening, or thanks for watching the podcast. Please take a couple of seconds to engage with us. Please subscribe, like, or give us a comment on how you're finding the podcast so far. And keep listening. Take care. All the best. Keep smiling.